Joseph Stagni, and this is my final project for curriculum development on my unique method for teaching and learning. First, I want to share with you all the worldview that influenced this method and what contributed to it. Right now, I'm at a point of transition between religious educational contexts. At this moment, I am working with a CLC ministry at Loyola, and by this time next year I will actually be teaching with an alumni service corps at my high school, volunteering to teach a couple classes to see how it goes and be of service in whatever way I can. But the consistencies over this transition, I believe, are my response to the baptismal call in the universal priesthood, and my desire to want to keep people active in their faith lives for the immense benefits it offers. Several theological concepts that have influenced my worldview on religious education are the Incarnation, the Trinity, grace, and theology of accompaniment. The Incarnation, I believe, shows that God understands our giftedness, that the divine can understand the human, and likewise, the human can somewhat understand the divine. The Trinity shows that God understands the importance of relationships because God is a relationship, and that I think can carry over to how we humans can understand each other. Kathleen O'Goran teaches us that all is grace, which is a gift from God that hopefully leads to a response of gratitude. And I just want to go into each day just looking to find ways in which God is trying to grace me and respond to those as gratefully as I can. And lastly, theology of accompaniment, I believe, ties all these things together and makes students aware of what they don't yet see or understand. I believe that on this journey that teachers can help with students in whatever situations they may need help with inside or outside the classroom, and they'll learn much more from it. My current religious context, as I said, is ministering to my college peers. Most of them are trying to figure out how to live independently and how to incorporate living faithfully into that. Most of the members of my current ministry are white women. However, this year my ministry is becoming more diverse, and I expect that trend to continue into the future. Institutionally, Loyola is supportive and encouraging, but I think they could do a little bit more in accordance with the values that CLC and Loyola promote. Socioculturally, my high school that I'm thinking about going to is an all-boy Catholic Jesuit high school that has a lot of money. I would say that diversity mirrors Loyola in terms of improvement over time. Institutionally, my high school is very organized, very focused on results, and very supportive of me. My worldview greatly influences my approach to religious education and constantly informs my vocation. It gives me the confidence that I sometimes do not have with my abilities. It helps me know myself better so I can teach who I am, as Palmer advises us, in addition to whatever content I will be teaching. When I am not myself in my ministry settings, I can feel that I'm too far in my head and my words sometimes sound more boring than a teacher lecturing nonstop for an hour and a half. In that situation, your students can sometimes be like just a mindless robot just waiting for the class to end. But what truly connects me with the people I'm teaching is being vulnerable in service of learning, because then they're actually engaging with you instead of just waiting for the time to pass by. Another contribution in my worldview has been postmodernism, as it's articulated by Slattery. He gives 11 different definitions for postmodernism, which can make it difficult to understand, as it was for me. But postmodernism is more than just those 11 definitions. It's a thought that's distinctly different from thoughts of previous eras because it tries to correct the wrongs of those eras towards an eye of doing justice. And what I want to do with religious education is provide young people with a solid foundation for being and doing good in the world, and I think the postmodern worldview is particularly suited for ensuring that justice is done. Next, I'm going to briefly analyze the religious traditions that have been a part of my educational context since high school, and that I want to continue to be a part of my educational context going forward. The Jesuit tradition particularly influenced my role as a religious educator. St. Ignatius emphasizes gratitude, meeting people where they are, and practicality within his tradition, which is particularly useful for an educational context based on faith. I also utilize this principle of discernment for many big decisions, such as the one to go into religious education at a Jesuit high school to begin with, because I believe that this is how I can best utilize my God-given gifts to do God's will here and now. My Catholic tradition informs me that Christ was priest, prophet, and king. The famous Vatican II document Lumen Gentium tells us by baptism we become a part of the body of Christ and share in those priestly, prophetic, and kingly roles. As a priest, I'm called to teaching, praying, and keeping traditions by remembering, blessing, and making holy in whatever ways I can. As a prophet, I'm called to speak the word of God. As a king, I'm called to live the gospel in my little world as well as I can to make the kingdom of God a reality. Next, I want to focus on the methodological foundations for my unique method to teaching and learning. I've been exposed to various methods of religious education and curriculum development this semester. The first I want to share with you is story linking, which I find easily relatable to my current CLC ministry because it contains a wisdom that frees and builds hope for vocation. But story linking is more than just linking stories. It's linking the everyday events of our lives to our faith traditions, and this is different for each person. So that creates a kind of wisdom that everybody in a classroom or in a meeting can learn from each other, and that it can also be connected to your own cultural context too. So it's a great experience of connection that really informs. Another method that I've seen is Montessori schools, which seem to focus on cultivating one's imagination in order to better understand the human potential. Another method that I've learned about comes from the textbook Understanding by Design. It offers a curriculum design in which the end results are first determined before deciding how the students will achieve those results and what instruction will accomplish that. It's kind of like backwards logic if you think about it, just going from the end to the beginning of how you'll get to the end. And one more method that I've learned from is Thomas Groom's shared praxis approach that integrates faith and life and encourages reflection, action, and imagination into a religious educational curriculum. So now that I've explained how I've gotten to develop my method, I want to actually show y'all my method now in the form of this curricular map. As y'all can see, the topics are divided into weeks in particular instead of specific classes. That's because at my high school they do a block scheduling where you have 7 total classes, one of which rotates out each day. And each day begins with a different class, but it's all in a specific order. So I anticipate there being 4 classes per week. In some instances there will be 5. So I just divided them into weeks based on the material that I think that I could cover. And I decided to use a sacraments class, the semester-long sacraments class, as my template because that was one of the most memorable classes that I had in high school, and I thought that this would be where I could best implement my method. The class itself starts off with prayer as an introduction because I think that prayer, as defined as a relationship with God, best serves as foundation for what the sacraments are and what they have to offer us. Moving on from that, After an explanation of prayer and what it is, then will be an introduction to the sacraments, operative definitions like sacrament itself, sacramentality, ex opere operato, ex opere operantis, etc. Then we'll actually get into each of the sacraments individually: baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, anointing of the sick, reconciliation, matrimony, and holy orders. And as for students' skills and what they're going to bring to the table of the classroom learning environment, for the prayer section specifically, students will bring their own experiences of prayer and be willing to share those. And for introduction to the sacrament, students will bring their previously held assumptions about the sacraments and what they've learned previously so that we can build upon them. For baptism, students will bring their own understandings of baptism. They'll be able to draw on their own experiences and will be open to various learning experience. And this goes the same for the rest of the sacraments. Questions that students will be able to answer by the end will be simple definition questions like what is prayer? Then they'll be able to answer how prayer relates to the sacraments and what are the implications of prayer for the church's ritual celebrations like the sacraments. For the an introduction to the sacraments definition, it's mostly answering definition type questions. What is a sacrament? What is sacramentality? Like I mentioned earlier. Additionally, they'll be able to answer to the significance of those terms to them and how they understand it, and implications for a sacramental approach to life and what that means. For specific sacraments, they'll be able to answer like, what is baptism? What does it symbolize? What does it mean to you? And the implications of it towards Christian living. And then we'll apply all those same questions to the rest of the sacraments. Benchmarks are basically answering these questions. They'll be able to define the terms, have a good working definition of all the terms, all the sacraments, be able to understand the relationships between between themselves and what they symbolically represent. Additionally, by the end, they'll be able to connect all the units together, the sacraments, definitions that serve the foundation for them, and then prayer, which serves the foundation for all. For instructional activities, with it being my first year teaching and my school wanting to be as supportive as I can, they're going to want to micromanage me to make sure I'm doing what they want. So they don't really want me to teach the textbook or something like that as well as I can. But I know that curriculum in education is a lot more than just teaching a textbook. So within each weekly unit, I want to do some lecture based on the textbook readings, or in the case of prayer articles, to appease them. But I also want to do a more application and implication class days, so that they can really understand and uncover what's being covered in the textbook in their own lives and going forward. So for example, after a few classes of lecturing based on PowerPoint lectures based on textbook material, an application of it would look, for example, for reconciliation, look something like this, based on the Groomed Shared Christian Praxis method. This one I created for one of my CLC meetings that I think would be a good transition to high school classroom model. So for example, for this method, I wanted to show how the sacrament of reconciliation in a church-like setting can relate to the process of reconciliation in our everyday lives. And I wanted to do that by using the story of Jacob wrestling with an angel to show how we wrestle with our own problems in relationships and whatnot, and how we help and how we turn to others for support. So the first part would be naming what that is, what those struggles are, and the second stage would be reflecting on how that on what that does to you emotionally and stuff like that. Then it would be tying those namings and reflections to to the story of Jesus and in the Bible, in this case Jacob, of how we may wrestle with our own demons, or angels in this case, but how we ultimately turn to God for guidance and direction in that, for healing. And then we integrate that into our lives for wanting to share in that process of reconciliation with one another, forgive someone who's wronged you in some way. And then responding would be like how that would actually play itself out once you leave the classroom. And a shared Christian praxis approach to these applications is what I'm planning on doing for all the other sacraments and prayer experiences for the other units as well. Resources that will be used for the first unit, I plan on finding some prayer articles that will be really useful in articulating what prayer is all about. And then for the other units, most material will come from a textbook. There will be PowerPoint lectures on each of them, in addition to whatever space or reflections will be needed for these application and implication classes. As far as assessing how students will be learning, the application and implication classes will be a very good indicator of how students are uncovering what's being covered in class in their own lives and upon application. Additionally, there will be one quiz and one test on each unit, depending on how I would see fit. There will also be a comprehensive exam at the end of the first quarter, which will be about week 9, I believe, and then another exam at the end of the semester, which week 18, which students will have the opportunity of being exempt from under certain conditions. But besides just those objective methods that the school needs, I really want to focus on the application and implication assessments, because that'll be the bigger indicator of how students are understanding what's being taught. In my unique teaching method here, I've decided to draw from several models for several reasons. As you saw, I drew a lot from Groom's shared practice approach, because I believe that if all the components of the model are present and functioning well, then students would certainly receive the fullness of the religious educational experience. The only point of detraction would be that many people like to compartmentalize faith and life and do not take the time to reflect as a result. I do not like the Montessori school approach for my method, because trying to develop an imagination in high school boys is nearly impossible. But I could try to develop imagination in the sense of trying to help them think about how to proceed in the light of what they've learned. I do like story linking, because it incorporates the lived experiences of many people of many diverse cultures into education and ties those experiences to God's presence in our lives. However, I can't use this method to its fullest extent, because it also ties to the African American story, which most of my class would not be able to relate to, although I do think that the benefits of learning from diverse culture and being able to use that in order to do justice outweighs the negative in this regard. Understanding by Design does offer clear goals as a starting point, serving as motivation for educators to accomplish those goals, which I believe definitely can be a good thing. However, the problem with this method occurs when educators look so far ahead that they fail to see what's in front of them. Educators can't be so focused on trying to accomplish a goal that they forget to answer how or with what they will accomplish it. I would argue for this method based on my personal experiences and the experiences of those around me. I would argue that the glut of information that needs to be memorized for a certain amount of time is a boring and dreadful experience that students desperately want to avoid each day. I want to balance that with an application and implication section that will actually get students thinking and provide a somewhat joyful learning experience. It also provides students with a challenge of sorts that will wake them up to what is going on around them. This vision I have will start next year, although since it is my first year teaching, like I said, I assume they'll have the training wheels on me, so to speak. The fact that I would be teaching religion as opposed to any other subject really would greatly help in being able to utilize this method. This method seems to be the balanced curriculum that I dreamed of, and I would hope to have the support of the administration that supported me for 5 years as a student in that school, and the theology department, who I greatly respect. This is certainly a dream in the sense of making real something that currently is not. However, this is also a dream in terms of an idealism that my curriculum a year from now will look exactly like this. Whenever I seem to obsessively plan out anything, whether in a ministry context or in the course of simple interaction, it never goes according to plan. God surprises me like that a lot. And I hope that God surprises me with better success at this ministry than what I could possibly articulate or design right now.